No mai haere mai, ko Shannon Dowsing toko ingoa. Welcome to the Exchange Café. At the Exchange Café, we come together to share conversations and resources about climate solutions. We're fortunate to have Harley, Dibble and Heidi Hughes in the studio with us today to discuss the Wednesday Challenge. Kia ora, welcome. Wonderful to have you both here. First of all, do you want to introduce yourselves briefly and tell us about your roles in the community and in Wednesday Challenge?
Sure. Kia ora, yeah, I'm Harley and I work at in a small organisation called Road Te Piro Ora. We support a bunch of the regional leadership groups in Tairāwhiti. In terms of Te Wero Wenerei, the Wednesday Challenge in Tairāwhiti, I'm the local project lead for the pilot that is we've been running for about 2.5 months and it's finishing at the end of this month. I'm also the chair of the Tairāwhiti Environment Centre and TEC, the Environment Centre, is the supporting umbrella organisation for the pilot.
Great, thank you, Harley. And Heidi.
Yeah, kia ora, I'm Heidi, I'm based in Tauranga, and I, along with a friend, put together Wednesday Challenge about a couple of years ago. It's and it's a project that is kind of trying to work on the challenge of transport in this country and moving people towards a more sustainable transport. So.
Well, it certainly is a challenge because everywhere you look, it's single people and single motor vehicles, isn't it? It's, we're not particularly good at public transport or alternative transport.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that. You know, it didn't happen. It didn't happen overnight. I think a lot of the urban planning was done at a time when cars were really popular overseas. So in the 50s, when we were creating a lot more neighbourhoods at that time, they were built to house cars and for everyone to drive everywhere, and that kind of development pattern has continued. And then in the 80s, we just had this massive flood of cheap Japanese imported cars. So then everybody decided they didn't just need one car; they needed 2 cars per family. So we've just kind of continued that urban design that's based on cars. So it's definitely challenging to unpack that, because internationally now, you know, we've realised this is actually not a sustainable way forward for everyone to be moving around in a private chariot made of a whole lot of metal.
I think you're generous to say that we designed around the motor vehicle. I think some of our infrastructure was designed around driving stock down the main street and making sure you could access markets. It's we certainly haven't done modernised urban planning like you see in some of the larger cities that are really welcoming for cycling and that kind of thing, right? But I'd love to discuss specifically what the Wednesday Challenge is and what it's about. So can we dive into that? You want to tell us? Yeah,
sure. So the idea, this came out of the pandemic actually. Then the first lockdown, we witnessed a real sudden transition on what streets were used for, and with the cars gone, a whole lot of people and bikes and everything came out of the woodwork. And in our community, even though obviously lockdown was super challenging for a lot of people, what it did do is it created this kind of energy on the streets that we really hadn't seen before. So we kind of thought, well, what would that look like if we tried to hold on to that in some way? And maybe we could kind of concentrate that onto one day a week, get people thinking about how they could change one day a week in order to sort of influence other days. So the Wednesday Challenge kind of came about, and the idea is that people leave their single occupancy car at home but share rides or use a bike or walk, and we've been doing that in schools. So schools can challenge each other across schools. They can challenge per classroom and to get kids involved in walking and cycling, and then also in businesses to get the people thinking about commuting in a different way.
Awesome. You mentioned schools. Is it just for primary, intermediate, secondary, or is it tertiary as well? Should we be competing in it?
Yeah, hello, yeah, absolutely, yes it is, because we've got, so it's been piloting in Tauranga, and And we've had great success in working with, we've got 19 schools involved there in their primary, intermediate and high school. And the tertiaries have been a little bit harder just in, I think because in the last kind of, since the pandemic, the way that students are interacting with their campuses is a lot different. So they're harder to connect with than the schools. Obviously kids are all coming into school, so it's easier to connect with them, but certainly tertiaries are a perfect place for it as well. You know, people understand the why so clearly. Young people understand the why of what the opportunities are. So, and then in terms of, I'll pass it over to Harley because
so there was maybe a couple of years back there was a small group of community members and businesses that were getting together every so often to talk about climate change and how, you know, what are the things that we could do to reduce our emissions and raise awareness of the challenges. And this was a little group called Tairāwhiti ER, and that group noticed what was happening in Tauranga, and so we kind of reached out to Heidi to, you know, basically learn from their experience. We were really lucky, and that group included, you know, tech, as I've mentioned, Healthy Families East Cape, the Gisborne Chamber of Commerce, a rep from Trust Tairāwhiti, and council as well. And so we started talking, and then an opportunity arose through the Wakakotahi Innovation Fund. So Tauranga HQ supported an application for the region to seek some funds to undertake a 3-month pilot to explore what a Tairāwhiti version of the Wednesday Challenge might look like. So a pilot, learning experience. Cyclone came along. There's been some delays in terms of like getting this thing going, but yeah, the last 2.5 months we've been running the pilot. It's been focused on schools. We definitely didn't want to bite off more than we could chew, and it's been going fantastically well, and the support from the students, from teachers and parents has been really great. There's a real different agencies are wanting to get on board. We've had the support from Enviro Schools coordinators. They're helping out with the encouraging students at the gate. So there's been a real buzz around the pilot. So yeah, that was the sort of genesis and the connection, and we've been really lucky to have the support from the Tauranga sort of HQ Wednesday Challenge team as we've rolled out the pilot.
Let's talk specifically about the big picture element of this. Sure. So it's intended to help, I guess, train the next generation away from what we currently do, what their parents are doing, which is using cars every day, and but it's to combat climate change, right? It's to reduce our emissions from personal vehicle use.
Yeah, well, there's definitely that aspect to it, but I think what we're trying to, and we are excited about, is this pilot and this approach is about having some fun,
health,
considering healthy and active alternatives to single-use car use. Getting
kids back active, and that side of things, because the activity is absolutely proven to help brain development and help kids concentrate in class if they're. I had this wonderful conversation yesterday with the receptionist in one of the schools, and she said, "Oh, my kids obviously used to get a ride with her because she's coming to the same location, but." She said, and I make them walk 20 minutes each way now, so 40 minutes exercise that they're not even thinking about. They're walking together, so they're communicating with each other, and it's all folded into their day. And I think that's a huge part. And just with a lot of the actions that we need to do around climate change. There's so many spin-offs that we don't need to so much talk about that big scary thing that shit, we've all got to change. But it's really about what are the benefits and what are the aspects of that that are actually going to make that transition really positive for people. And
Awesome. I mean, it sounds like the kind of thing that we all want in our lives, you know. We all know someone who's a regular gym goer, and they're always like, I have to go, otherwise I can't think during the day. And I'm not one of those, unfortunately. So you got lots of schools involved in Tairāwhiti?
Yeah, we have eight schools. It's predominantly urban schools, so there is this sort of, we did reach out to all of the schools in the region, talk to principals across the region. Rural schools have different challenges. They have busy roads, longer distances, real access challenges. So the pilot has, whilst we did try and get a broader mix in terms of the urban, rural sort of, urban and rural, it's predominantly urban, and those schools are loving it. So the feedback has been really positive. We're learning a lot of things. There's little spin-offs that are happening. So a number of the schools are doing walking buses, for example. So meeting points where kids can go walk to school together. I've been supporting one in the for the Wenerei Beach School. It's an interesting experience. I've listened to lots of the Wheels on the Bus songs as we walk to verses as we walk to school.
Don't pretend you don't start those verses, Harley.
Yeah.
Can we do another round?
But there's and it's just interesting. There's rollerbladers, scooterers, that's the thing. You know, people on their bikes. So the walking bus thing sort of expands out. There's so many different modes just turning up to go to school together, and it's great.
Yeah, and I think that, the other thing about is a big part of it is the safety thing, because that's a big concern of a lot of people. But the same thing occurs. Studies have really shown that the more people you have out on the streets, the slower the cars go, the more awareness there is, and the more kind of the more safe it is. So there's kind of this transition point. We've got lots of safety things that need to happen in some of those rural schools. We just act as a feedback mechanism to send that back to councils and be a bit of a conduit for what needs to change to make it easier for these schools to participate. But we're in this place of change where you can't expect everybody to suddenly just jump on a bike and because it's actually not easy for a lot of people. So we're kind of working with those people that would and could, given their current transport system. Because if they can get out there and start, then it makes a whole lot of those other things easier to implement. If the bus is a little bit more full, it makes councillors think that they should put on more buses. And if there's more people on bikes, more bike lanes might be developed, etc., etc. So it's kind of creating that impetus.
And you did ask a question about businesses. So this initial pilot's been focused on schools. We are looking to learn from this pilot, but then expand this project to a more of a multi-year ongoing program, but build in a business component. And we're also hoping that'll help with the school side, because often it's the people that are the parents have to go to work, and if their employers are more accommodating in terms of maybe start times, or make it easier to bike to work or take a different approach, the two will sort of complement each other. So that's the sort of the next step we're trying to expand into, supporting businesses to think about this as well.
So you define this as a pilot, and I guess I should ask what defines it as a pilot. It's I think there's a reward structure, and you log journeys on the app. Is that are you kind of coming to the end of that piece, and then you...
I'll let you explain some of that, I guess. But the pilot it's essentially we have a discrete amount of funding to support this initiative, and we'll take the learnings, and then we're in the process of having discussions with a number of potential funders and sponsors to turn this into a more ongoing program. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've been doing a whole lot of refining of the technology that we've been working with as well, and to make it easier for schools to log journeys and things like that in classrooms, just because you don't want to take up teachers' time and you want to make it just as easy as possible. And the same thing with the business app. We've got a really cool, it's a web app, so it just kind of sits on your phone, but it's we're now kind of looking at, well, if we can look at the commute back and forwards, and if we can add in what people's distances are, so they can put that in at the start, then they can calculate their emissions savings, and that then can go into Scope 3 reporting for businesses who want to do that in their annual reports to show what the emissions scope. I don't know if people know, but Scope 3 emissions is where the kind of travel to, travel from emissions from your staff come into your reporting, and that all just kind of goes into the mix to calculate your overall emission status. So there's a lot of businesses now that are working on how we bring those down, and what are the different elements to that. So it's really helpful to be able to monitor that and create some data around it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are the challenges to start creating improvements in this region and to start activating people outside of, obviously having a challenge is great, getting into schools and having those conversations, but there must be infrastructure problems, and there must be, I know our bus routes are kind of one way at the moment, and so you've got to decide to jump on a massive loop if you want to get to where you're going.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. I feel like the pilot, it's happening at a really interesting time for the region. So you've talked about the bus routes. The council is reviewing its regional public transport plan, and that's going to be out, I understand, quite soon. The council also is doing a mode shift strategy, looking at the sort of stuff that we're basically just trying to get on and work with communities to achieve. And their wider regional public transport plan is going to be coming out soon. So and that will obviously include walking and cycling considerations. So we're one piece of this sort of wider transport system and puzzle to help support walking and cycling and that sort of broader mode shift. Hopefully it's also kind of raising general awareness of the need for a little bit more investment into those infrastructure challenges that you mentioned. Yeah.
So low-hanging fruit, if you could change one thing, what would it be? And you can each have an answer to this, because I'm sure they're different.
One thing, I think it's having a good conversation about walking and cycling in our region, that and the level of provision and priority that it's given in terms of funding. Yeah, that would probably be my one thing. Gee, you put me on the spot. That's good question.
Yeah. I think that there is a real when there's this conversation about cost all the time, but the cost of private vehicle ownership is just extraordinarily high, and the cost of people being unable to get to where they need to go because they are petrol poor is something that also needs to be explored. So it would be really great to be able to see when these costings are coming about for what needs to change. What are the real costs to community of private vehicle ownership, and the cost to our cities of having just so much concrete that needs to be maintained and set aside for parking when the the opportunity costs of this land in these beautiful areas that are currently just holding these cars is so valuable. So what are the opportunity costs for transitioning some of the ones that would and could out of their cars and into better modes? Yeah.
And those benefits that we talked about earlier, that there's wider benefits to doing things differently in terms of health and mental well-being and that wider environmental stuff.
Yeah. Sorry, I was at a school yesterday and the principal was standing in front of her car park and she said, "Look at this, it's half empty." And it's usually full, and that was a Wednesday, and it was. She said it's now all the teachers aren't taking their cars as well. And looking at that car park, it probably would have fitted 5 courts in it for doing some cool stuff, tennis or paddle tennis or whatever. But it's covered in cars. So what's for schools? What's the opportunity? They used to be full of bike racks, and now the car parks just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and in schools as well. So I think there's massive opportunity for that positive transition. Stories to be told.
Yeah, I know. My experience of living internationally is that we almost took for granted how good the public transport was in larger international cities, and there's a lot of, as you say, opportunity lost just in your commute time when you're focused on driving. I would spend a lot of my time every day just sitting on a bus or on a train, having the opportunity to read or to catch up with people or to do those little tasks that you don't get an opportunity for when you're driving. And we know the scope and breadth of our roading in our region. It's, we're a very large geographical region with fairly poor infrastructure due to any number of elements. But and we're still sitting there thinking that the right option is to jump in our cars and whip on down them. So I think if I could change one thing, it would be to give more people the experience of that, of what it's like to live with good public transport infrastructure, because then you know that it's actually preferable to get on the bus. You enjoy having that extra time to yourself and being able to just walk out the door, jump on the vehicle that's going past, and be whisked off to wherever you're going. And I think that would make people make better decisions around public transport if you had that experience. But, so what's next? Next steps for Wednesday Challenge?
Oh, well, we've got a couple more weeks for the pilot, and then we've got a lot of learnings to assess. We've been doing that as we go, but it's a period of continuing the conversations with other potential funders and sponsors, because we want to be in a position to kind of hit the ground running for the new school year next year. And so it's a bit of a funding thing, and then exploring that broader approach where businesses are brought into the fold as well. So that's what's next. We just want to continue the really good momentum that we've gained with the schools and build on that in Tairāwhiti. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, look, thank you both for coming in. Heidi, it's been wonderful to have you in region. Keep us walking, keep us moving.
Nice.
And Harley, lovely to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
We'll look forward to I'll look forward to getting my tertiary crew to start walking and cycling.
Oh, that's fantastic.
We'll definitely be participants as you go into into next year. We'll see how it affects my business too.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Shannon.
Thanks so much.
You both.
It's been great.
On Ngā mihi nui, thank you for joining us, and thank you both for providing your knowledge and insight today. Follow and contribute to the Exchange Café at exchangecafe.co.nz, because together we have the solutions. Mā te wā.